Alright, in this video I'm going to be exchanging the fans in this Zotac GPU. It is a 3060 Ti, but this process is pretty similar for most GPUs. I got these fans, Apistec, I guess is the brand, and I don't really think that they're Zotac branded. It seems like someone just sort of did a 3D print on Zotac emblems and put them on here, and it's from this GPU fan replacement website. The price was okay. They were like 20 bucks US or something plus $10 shipping. And I did get some thermal paste on this because I'm going to do a teardown to get these fans out and rerun the wires and that kind of thing. If you're just replacing a fan, you might not have to actually do a full teardown. But these fans were making some noise, and I went to investigate what that noise was from, and I ended up breaking one of the fans. And I do want to sell this GPU. Like I said, it's a 3060 Ti. It is a bit of a weird version. I've never seen this version of a Zotac 3060 Ti anywhere else, but I got this secondhand in Toronto and I want to sell it, so I want the fans to be working. Now there are some screws on the I/O shield, and these screws need to come out because they attach the I/O shield to the heatsink, and I want that removed because it is also attached to the board of the GPU, and it obviously, to separate the board from the heatsink, I need to also get the I/O shield off as well. So there's 4 screws on the back that also need to come out, and they're the ones that keep the board pressed firmly against the heatsink. So once those 4 are out, and assuming the screws to the I/O shield are out, the GPU should come apart. And obviously there's a connector for the fans. And that's the major part of the teardown, and I obviously did break the seal of the thermal paste, so that's why I had already bought thermal paste. Now there's 6 screws that hold the plastic cowling to the heat shield, so I'm going to remove those 6 screws as well. And these screws are tiny, just make sure you don't lose them, obviously. And then one of the other things I do go and get midway through the process is a pair of tweezers, because it's just a little bit easier to use tweezers to put the screws back in. Now, I'll just put the heatsink aside for now. It is pretty dirty, so I am going to clean it, but I will remove the fans. Now, there are some channels on the fan shroud. You just got to pick the wiring out of there, and you can see that these fans are the same, but obviously they are a different brand. Now, I am going to use a eyeglass screwdriver and just reach between the blades of the fans. Each of the fans has 3 screws that are securing it in place. So I'll take them out one at a time. First one I'll do is the one with the 2 electrical connectors, and this will make sure that they go back in the right spot. It's pretty easy. Obviously you need to get the electrical connectors oriented in the right direction, and then there's only 3 options for where the screws are going to line up. The hardest part of this whole job is getting these screws back in. I found it was just a little bit awkward, and this is where I went and got the tweezers because my fingers are too fat to get in there. I don't know if there's a trick to doing this, but I didn't figure it out. So I wish you the best of luck if you're doing this. I assume that getting frustrated while doing this is just part of the process, and that is all there is to it. So anyway, once I get all 3 screws back, I'll give it a little test spin and make sure that it is not hitting any of the plastic on the plastic cowling around the fan. And it's good to go, no issues at all. And I'll get the screwdriver out and I'll remove the 3 screws on the second fan. And once again, the screws come out no issues. In fact, all of the screws on this thing come out no issues. Just make sure you don't strip the heads. Obviously they're very small screws, so you need to be careful with them. And that is the fan that I accidentally broke while I was trying to figure out what was making the noise on the GPU. And as mentioned, I am planning on selling this thing. I don't want to sell a GPU with a jacked up fan, even though probably no one would notice. I would know deep down in my heart of hearts that it was broken. So now once again, I'll take the screws, drop them in between the fan blades, and just make sure all the holes are lined up. Like I said, it is a pain. It was a pain on the first one, it was a pain on the second one, and when you do it, you'll probably also find it to be a bit of a pain. But you just need to get through it and get those screws back in the fans. Now once the fans are both in, and I gave them both a spin to make sure that they're not hitting the plastic, I'm going to put the electrical connectors together on the back of the GPU, and I can take all the wiring and just route it through the channels that are in the fan housing to ensure that the fans don't hit the wires once everything's all put back together. And I'll do a little test fit with the heatsink, and then obviously give the fans another spin. Just make sure once again that nothing's gonna actually hit any of the fans once this thing ramps up. Now I did take this heatsink outside and I did use my air compressor to blow out all of the dust. Once that was done, I come back inside with isopropyl alcohol, which is different than rubbing alcohol. Rubbing alcohol has other additives in it, and isopropyl alcohol is far more pure. This is 99% pure, so that's what you want. And then I'm just taking Q-tips and cleaning up the thermal paste, and then just doing some general cleaning on the heatsink as well. Once the heatsink's all cleaned up, I'll just line it back up on the fan housing, and then I'll take those 6 screws and I'll put those screws back in. And once everything's all put together, just like always, I'll give the fans a spin and just make sure that nothing is hitting. So obviously you don't want to get to the end of the process and find out that your fan is hitting wires or something like that. A few tests throughout the process will ensure that you don't meet with failure at the end. And just like on the heatsink, I'm going to use the isopropyl alcohol and some Q-tips to clean off all the thermal compound from the chip as well. And I do go around and do some additional cleaning. I don't know if the person I bought was a smoker or what, but it's like a sticky tar almost on the back end of this GPU, and there's quite a bit of it. So basically everything from the chip to the rear of the GPU had this like thick black gooiness to it. Anyway, I did get it all off. It just took a little bit of time. Not important to the video, but once again I'm using that isopropyl alcohol. I'm now going to apply the thermal paste, and I used 3 strips of thermal paste to see how that would function. And then I put the heatsink on, took it off, and just got a visual of how well that spread out on the heatsink and the board. And obviously I wasn't happy with it, so I did take the little spatula that comes with the thermal paste and spread the thermal paste around a bit before putting the heatsink back on. Though normally I don't use that little spatula thing. And obviously you want to be careful when you're reconnecting the board and the heatsink, just to make sure that the thermal pads line up as they should. And obviously I didn't replace the thermal pads. Now there's 4 screws that I'm going to replace, and those are going to pull the board and the heatsink together. So they do need to be fully screwed in, and I always go around and tighten these things down slowly. I don't go all the way down on one screw and then do another one. I usually do it kind of like how you do a car tire, going crisscross and then screwing each one of them down just a little bit before transferring over to the next one. Once the 4 main screws are back on, I'll take the final 3 screws that go into the I/O shield and put them on. Once all that's done, obviously you got to put it in the computer, boot it up, and make sure the fans are working and that the GPU is also good to go. So I'm going to run some benchmarks. Obviously it's going to get the fan spinning up to full speed, and as well, for at least for this Furmark one, it'll show you the fan curve as they ramp up throughout the stress test. And then I also have the MSI combustor stress test. So like I said, I do run a bunch of benchmarks and stress tests to make sure that everything is functioning properly on the GPU, and obviously specifically the fans. And the last one here, I do run a Haven benchmark as well. Anyway, overall process pretty easy. Really the only thing difficult is just working with tiny screws, which can obviously be a little bit painful. Anyway, hopefully this helps somebody out. Thanks for checking out my video. Don't forget to like and subscribe.